Well done, man.
Good evening again, and having reached the hour of 5:30, welcome to your town hall. Tonight I'll begin the regular meeting, and after the prayer and pledge, Ann is going to do a little tribute to one of our foundational residents in Sarita, and then I'll recess the meeting and go to the Rancho Cerita, CFD. Tonight's invocation will be given by Sergeant Mike Blevins of the Sarita Police Department, followed by the pledge led by Jackson Hayes, an 8th grade student, and Nathan Hibbert, a 9th grade student, and Emily Hibbert, a 10th grade student, all attending the Liberty Youth Academy. Officer Blevins?
Would you prepare yourself as you are testifying?
Now you broke it, Mike.
Problem solver, there we go.
The only way I know about that problem.
There we go.
I'm sure you can hear you without the mic, Mike.
There we go. I just want to get your attention. Father God, we thank you so much for this community. It is such a beautiful community, and I just right now want to take the time just to pray over the residents and their well-being. Pray over those that serve in our public safety and in our schools. And specifically tonight, I just want to pray for those that are elected officials that have the task of governing. I pray for them and for discernment, for wisdom. And I just thank you for them and their hearts and their willingness to serve. You were pleased with that. And we just come right now and we just know that you're present here. And so we take this time to acknowledge that. And we seek you as we make the decisions for the well-being of this community. And it is in your name we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
The students want to come front, lead us in the pledge? Thank you. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it very much. Thanks, Officer Blevins. Next, we'd like to recognize the contributions of Planning and Zoning Commissioner Tim Trosper, who passed away recently, and Anna will be coming to the podium to say a few words.
Good evening. The Town of Sarita staff, Planning and Zoning Commission, and Council were saddened by the passing of our longtime Planning and Zoning Commission Chairman, Tim Trosper. Mr. Trosper served on the Planning and Zoning Commission from March 14th, 2005 until December of 2021. During his time on the commission, and especially serving as chair, Mr. Trosper made evident how much he truly cared about the town of Sarita and its appropriate growth and development. He ensured that any member of the public who wanted to be heard on a topic was treated with respect, and in turn, his quiet dignity inspired the respect of other commission members and staff. He understood how to navigate the pressures of development while striving to maintain the qualities that make Sarita special, and which in turn drive development. In addition to his almost 17 years of volunteer service on the Planning and Zoning Commission, Mr. Trosper served the Sarita community in countless other ways. His volunteer activities included many years with the Copper Hills Little League, the Green Valley Sarita Optimist Club, and the Friends of the NRA. He also volunteered with the American Legion, the Sarita Unified School District Board, and the Salvation Army Disaster Relief Team. Somewhere in between all of his volunteer hours, he found the time to be a local business owner, very successful business, and also an advocate for small local businesses. On behalf of the entire town of Sarita, I'd like to offer sincere condolences to Mr. Trosper's family. A memorial stone, which is displayed on the table up front here for anybody who'd like to see it, will be placed in the Town Hall Memorial Garden in his honor. Mr. Trosper will be sorely missed, and his shoes will be hard to fill. I know a few of the council members would like to say a few words, too.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you for the family for being here. The only two that we have over there are Abigail and Adrian, who are both town employees, but that's how special Tim, was to us. He was an employee, but he was really a foundational resident. I moved here in 2003 and had an opportunity to meet him early on, and not only everything that was read, but also all my years on the school board, always appreciated his leadership and everybody's help with the Friends of the NRA. Our NJROTC program is much better because of that support and all the funds that they have raised over time. So obviously, this is just one small way that we try to pay tribute to Tim and thank him for all of his service to the town. If anybody else.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I got to know Tim professionally, but then also personally through Randy Graff quite a number of years ago. Tim was always the go-to guy when something needed to be done. There are people that talk about doing something, and then there are people like Tim who actually get it done and would always step up and fill the void that needed filling. He was a pillar of this community and is going to be sorely missed.
Here.
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I met Tim many, many years ago. I think when I was still working for the fire department, before I came to work for the town. What I think is remarkable about Tim, well, many things. He's very strong, both in personality and in conviction. And the things that he fought for in his community, and I would imagine in his home, were always things that he thought was the best for the community or for his family. We didn't always agree. There was a few issues that we didn't agree on, but I always respected his opinion. And as it's been said several times already, he will be sorely missed, and we need more residents. And we thank him for his countless hours of volunteerism. This community wouldn't be the community it is without volunteers like him. And my heart and my prayers go out to the family for this time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to second Melissa's comments, certainly on your father. We had some disagreements, but we also had some good conversation. He was an honorable gentleman. Thank you.
I had the honor of meeting your father when I worked in building safety with permits and stuff, and I just want to tell you condolences to all of you. I hope every day gets easier for you. I don't know how it can. He was just such a stellar human being on this earth, not just in Sahuarita, everywhere. My condolences to you guys.
Thank you. And what we'll do is we'll hold on to the stone and then reach out to the family. And when we place it out there, we'll reach out and let you know. So that can be something a little more private for you as we go there. But thanks for your attendance. I know it wasn't easy. And please send our love condolences to your mom, Mary Jane. I know it's a hard time that she's going through. So. But, we're Sahuarita and we support each other, so please reach out if there's anything that you need. Thank you. Next, I'll suspend the town council meeting and commence with our Rancho Cerita Community Facilities District meeting. I hereby call this meeting to order of the Rancho Cerita Facilities District. Madam Clerk, may I have a roll?
Board Member Bracco.
Here.
Board Member Davis.
Here.
Board Member Hicks.
Here.
Board Member Lusk.
Here.
Board Member Morales. Vice Chairperson, Egbert, absent. Chairperson Murphy,
Present.
present.
Thank you.
Quorum present.
Item number 3 is called to the public. At this time, any member of the public is invited to address the district board on any issue which is on tonight's consent agenda or any issue which the district board can lawfully act upon at a future meeting. Pursuant to Arizona open meeting laws, the district board may not discuss the items, but individual members of the district board may respond to criticism made by those who have addressed the district board and may ask staff to review the matter or may ask the matter placed on a future agenda. I have a call to the public, but that's for the regular town council meeting call to the public, so it's not for this meeting. If anybody would like to address the board on the Rancho Cerita CFD, this would be the time. Seeing no movement, I will close the call to the public and move to item number 4, which is the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5, Madam Clerk.
Presentation and discussion of the draft feasibility report for the proposed issuance of additional general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $18,760,000 for the acquisition of public infrastructure and to be paid by an ad valorem tax assessed on all property in the Rancho Sarita Community Facilities District.
Thank you. And A.C. Mariotti, our district treasurer, will introduce the item. Mark Reeder, manager of Stiefel, Nicholas and Company, will present, and Michael Rossi, representing Rancho Cerita, will be available for questions. A.C.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is the second step of a three-step process before bonds get authorized. So based upon the developer's bond application at the last board meeting, you authorized staff to move forward with producing a feasibility report, which is a required element before any bonds can be issued by CFDs. So Mark Reeder will be giving you a presentation here in just a few minutes that goes over the draft or the preliminary results of that report. So we're not necessarily asking that the board take any action tonight, although you certainly may if you want to make any changes to the application that the developer has brought forth, which was the basis of the feasibility report. So based off of what you hear tonight, we'll take that feedback and incorporate any of those changes into the final draft of the report, which will be provided to you at the upcoming February board meeting. And at that point in time, it'll also be slated for the option to issue bonds. And because bonds affect property taxes, it'll also be a public hearing, and we'll provide notice of that to the public. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mark Reeder, who's our financial advisor.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mariotti. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I think Lisa was going to bring up the PowerPoint. Just let me know.
Mr.
when
Reeder,
that-
it's up. It's ready to go.
Thank you.
Do we have to reboot, Mark?
Well, I don't see it up on my screen. Do you see it? Does
Well-
anybody else see it?
Mr. Reeder, we do see it on our screen.
Okay. I don't see it on my screen, but I think I can. Is it up, Lisa?
It is.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and get started. And Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. Thank you for allowing us to Zoom in this evening. As you know, this is a feasibility study that you have in front of you that's in substantially final form. And in connection with that statutorily required feasibility report, we wanted to give you an update on the development progress of Rancho Cerita as the board considers issuing somewhere around $18.5 million in general obligation bonds in the coming 60 to 90 days, give or take. So with that, I'd like to take you to page 2. I know the board is very familiar with the Rancho Cerita project, but we'll just give you kind of a quick overview. This would be the third series of bonds sold by the district, so all of you have been through this process. But taking you to page 2, we just wanted to give you a quick overview that the district, as you all know, was formed in 2014, at which time $60 million of general obligation bond authorization was voted in. It's about a 943-acre community facilities district, master plan, residential community, and with some commercial property. The developer we've been working with, we're going to show you some slides here. They expect to have about 15 homes sold really over the next 3 years based on current demand. And they have master planned about 1.25 million square feet of commercial and industrial properties within the boundaries of the CFD, including the hospital that obviously has gone vertical. Tax rate in connection with the district is a total of $4.99 per $100 of net limited assessed value, $4.69 of which is a property tax levy for the repayment of debt service on the bonds. We're going to walk you through that in a moment. And another 30 cents is a maintenance and operation levy within the boundaries of the Community Facilities District. So the district was formed about 8 years ago, and there has been a significant amount of development progress. Page 3, which is titled Overview of Public Infrastructure Projects. You can see the significant amount of development progress being done by Rancho Cerita. Lots of lots being laid out there, as you can see, with platted, pre-platted, with lots of infrastructure dollars being invested within the district. So we just got that from them the other day. We wanted to share that aerial view with you on page 3. Page 4 is the description of the various public infrastructure projects that the district will acquire or in which the developer will be reimbursed. As you know, the developer makes the investment out of their pocket, and then as the infrastructure is completed in the third column over there on page 4, and you can see that the developers provided us with a comprehensive list of the projects totaling about 18.1 million and the estimated completion timelines associated with the infrastructure project. So they're underway in a big way, and for the projects that aren't yet underway, they are expected to be underway relatively soon. Page 5, we wanted to share some good news with you there as well. This we just got the numbers from the county, and so this shows the new full cash value. In other words, what the county assessor is picking up to be the value of the property within the 943 acres for fiscal year 22-23. And you can see probably no surprise there, given the development market and the development progress. You can see in the right-hand side that it's gone up from about 8.5 million to about 15.1 million is the current estimate for budget year 22-23. So obviously very pleased with that. Page 6 is similar, except this is the net assessed value. And the county, as you all know, applies an assessment ratio to our properties based on residential, commercial, agricultural, and that is the tax base in which we set our tax rate on and our revenues. And you can see in a similar fashion in current fiscal year 21-22, 6.9 million, or I should say last year, my apologies, and for 22-23 expected to be 12.1 million net assessed. On page 7, these are the developer projections of home closings, and you can see they had a very good year in 21 at about 175 homes, and they're expecting to do about 200 to 300 over the next 5 years. If I take you to page 8, Rancho Cerita sent us this as well. You can see there in fiscal year 21 is the number of new units of 175 that I just shared with you, which makes a cumulative home closings as we speak somewhere around 381 units. It's got the average sales price in there. It's got the neighborhoods. And then over the next 4 years, you can see the estimated developer home closing projections, the number of cumulative units in the third column, and the average sales price in the neighborhood, the different neighborhoods within the boundaries of the CFD. So I'm going to pause right there before I get into the bond structure. I think the long and the short of it is I think everybody's very pleased at the moment with the development progress and the number of residential homes that have been sold within the community. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll take a quick pause to see if there are any questions relative to that, and then I'll do a 5-minute overview of the bond structure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anybody on council have any questions so far?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
The only observation I'd make is I think that the year 2025 average sales price has arrived in 2022.
Right. Which I guess is good in the end site because
Absolutely, yeah.
more assessed value,
Yeah.
the more positive it would be.
Tremendous growth.
Continue, Mark. Thank you.
Okay. I'll go ahead, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and proceed with page 9 and 10. We're almost done here.
Please.
Okay, thank you. Just to give you all a reminder of how the bond issue is structured, if I take you to page 9 at the top, we talked about these being general obligation bonds, bonds that are repaid from a property tax levy based on the growth of the tax base and our tax rates that we talked about at $4.99 as indicated there. The amount of property taxes paid, as you all know, is a function of the value of each of our homes and that tax rate. The proposal requested by the developer at the moment is somewhere around $18.7 million. We're going to be fine tuning that number in the coming month. As far as selling the bonds, we'll be working closely with staff and the developer in terms of the type of bonds, type of sale we'll be doing, and we're going to be reporting back to council, the CFD Board of Directors on that in the coming really 4 to 6 weeks. Our bonds are structured over really a 25-year period. We're going to show you an estimate here where we estimate an interest rate of about 3%. We're going to show you what the debt service is, as indicated there in column 7 and 8. We're expecting this bond sale to be somewhere about, I'll round if you don't mind, about $1.1 million in debt service on top of the outstanding bonds that we have now for a total of about $1.7 million. The property tax revenues at the moment are estimated to generate about $540,000. So as you recall, we will enter into a shortfall, a standby contribution agreement with the developer where they pay the shortfall until the tax base is sufficient to meet the debt service requirements. And then as you recall, as a way to securitize and strengthen the transaction and to protect the town and the citizens, there's also a letter of credit requirement that they will post as part of doing the transaction, which is sized at 5 times maximum annual debt service. So very strong collateral behind the transaction and consistent with the 2 prior bond issues that we have all worked on together. On the next page, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, there's a lot of numbers here. Our apologies on page 10. I'm gonna kind of give you the global over here. If I can take you to column 2, that is a breakout of our residential property, and you can see the anticipated growth there, almost doubled going into 23, or it did double for budget year 22-23, as you can see. And then based on the home closings or the absorptions provided to us by Rancho Cerita, we've estimated what we believe to be some future growth in residential there. So you can see very strong based on the 200 to 300 home closings if that occurs. Our agricultural and vacant land had a nice bump, and we just kind of left that flat. A lot of that land, as you know, will be converted from ag and vacant to residential over the years. And then, of course, the commercial in column 4 there increased from 1,875,000 to almost 3 million. So the district was able to pick up, all or a portion of the hospital. And I know that the developer's working hard to, as best they can, continue to add commercial within the boundaries of the district. So column 5 just shows what the current tax base is. for 22-23, almost doubled. And then you can see going forward, we made some conservative assumptions, we hope, that will show what the growth is in the net limited tax base going forward. Column 7 is our existing bonds from the prior 2 bond deals we've worked on. Column 8 through 10 is the new bonds that I mentioned to you, somewhere around 1.1 million rounded numbers in column 9. And then we sized in the aggregate debt service, the revenues, and an estimate of those shortfall payments that we've been working closely with Rancho Cerita on. At the end of the day, in column 14 is our $4.69 secondary tax rate to support the bond issue for the boundaries of the district. So with that, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, that concludes my overall brief presentation. I hope that was helpful to you relative to the development progress of Rancho Cerita, and I'm glad to answer any other questions, as is Mr. Rossi. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Reeder, and, you know, it's a good story, and that's positive for us because we don't have a property tax in our town, so we're really reliant a lot on growth, and this goes a long way to help us get there. Mr. Rossi, did you want to add anything? And just for you to know, the slide presentation was up, and now we can see both of you, so you have to smile occasionally. There you go. Mr. Rossi, did you want to add anything off of Mr. Reeder's comments?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you very much for the opportunity this evening. I gave you a presentation on how excited we are with the level of growth and the performance of the project. I don't need to repeat that again this evening. I am here just in case anyone has any additional questions. But with that, I thank you all for your support on a really exciting time in the project.
Thank you. AC, did you, well, first of all, sorry, do anybody have any questions for either one? To my left? No? AC, did you have any wrap-up conversations on what will be next? And
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, if we don't have any other feedback, staff will bring back the final draft of the feasibility report, as well as the opportunity to authorize the issuance of bonds.
right. One part I thought was pretty exciting was 3% interest rate. I don't know how we can keep that locked in, but so I think haste would be good from that perspective.
As fast as we can go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Having no more further business for this Rancho Cerita CFD, we're adjourned with that meeting, and we'll return to our regular council meeting. Madam Clerk.
Roll call.
Yes.
Councilmember Bracco.
Here.
Councilmember Davis.
Here.
Councilmember Hicks.
Here.
Councilmember Lusk.
Here.
Councilmember Morales. Vice Mayor Egbert, absent. Mayor Murphy.
Here.
Quorum present.
Thank you. Tonight, we also have an award that we will be presenting, and at this time, I'll be going down to the podium, and if Mr. Burton will please join me at the podium. Do I have this down here, Lisa, or? No, I'll just take that. Good to see you. So I'm excited about presenting this particular award because not for all these hours you were out there, but I was out there for some of that. Pleased to announce the recipient of the 2021 Above and Beyond Award. The Above and Beyond Award recognizes employees who go above and beyond in addition to their regular duties. This year's winner of the Above and Beyond Award goes to Mr. Paul Burton, Traffic Signal Operations Manager. On July 23rd, the town experienced a monsoon microburst which resulted in 48 TEP utility poles falling into the town's roadways. Multiple roads were closed for extended periods of time, and the poles and the wires also caused significant damage to some of our infrastructure. Over the course of the next 5 days, Paul would put in over 61 hours of time, with approximately 30 hours consecutively the first 2 days. I think I was out there for some of that with you.
You were out there.
Additionally, despite working for 30 consecutive hours before leaving to go home and sleep, Paul stopped at all road closures locations to offer food, water, coffee to officers who had been at these locations for hours and hours. Paul worked exceedingly long hours in wet and often dirty conditions in order to ensure the residents of Sarita had safe and passable roads as quickly as possible, while still taking time to consider his fellow employees' working conditions. Mr. Burton was nominated by Assistant Town Manager and Public Works Director Beth Abramovitz. We're pleased to have you here at the podium, and the award's over here.
I want to say that while I'm honored and humbled by this award, this is really not an individual sport, as you would. There were an awful lot of good people out there with me, everyone from the streets maintenance workers to the mayor to the chief of police, out there side by side, knee-deep in the mud, making this work. And so I'm just thrilled to be part of such an amazing team. Thank you, everybody who helped out with this.
Next is item number 6, which is approval of the agenda. And item number 16, I was going to make the recommendation to table that because Beth Abramovitz is ill and was going to be leading that presentation. And then Councilman Bracco, did you want to add
Yeah,
something?
I'd like to table item 13, although it is of great consequence. The bill is not ready for prime time yet, so we'll
Thank
keep
you.
an eye on that.
So I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda with those two changes, tabling 16 and 13 at this time.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to approve as amended.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7, call to the public. At any time, any member of the public is invited to address the town council on any issue which is on tonight's consent agenda or any issue which the town council can lawfully act upon. At a future meeting pursuant to Arizona open meeting laws, the council may not discuss items, but individual members of the council may respond to criticism made by those who have addressed the council, may ask staff to review the matter, or may ask the matter to be placed on a future agenda. And I have one call to the public card, Susan Bryceland and Clarice Sullivan, two of our wonderful members, residents of Quail Creek. I hope you might have some good news for us.
We do. Mr. Mayor, Town Council members, we're honored to be here tonight and to let you all know that applications are now ready at the high school level for those students who are wishing to apply for the scholarship and then for the Women in Transition. Tonight, we're going to zoom in on the Women in Transition, which is for those over 21, and Clarice will give more detail on that information. A little bit of history. We have been coming here since 2016 when we established the Women in Transition, or the Women in Quail Creek Scholarship. We started with 2 high school scholarships, and then in 2017, we were asked to consider women who perhaps did not get to start on their education after they finished high school or it was interrupted, and because there was nothing for them. So we did. We established the Women in Transition, which again is for women over 21 years of age. Last year, we gave 5 $2,500 scholarships, with the majority of our recipients going to Pima Community College, because money goes a little bit further in a community college, so we really support that. And the year before that, we were able to give 4. This year, we're pleased to say we're going to be able to award up to 7 scholarships, and this is due to the generosity of the community and to those of you who have donated through our benefits to raise money.
Mr. Chairman, members of the council, I'm going to review with you this flyer which we're distributing throughout the communities. It gives, in a very succinct way, the information to women who might be wanting to apply for the scholarship. And as Susan said, it'll be women over 21 years of age, and we focus on women who have a financial need. If you look at the flyer, which I hope you have, you'll see that in the upper left corner, there's a QR code which will lead the applicant directly to the application. And down in the middle of the flyer is a QR code which will lead them to a 3-minute video with more information about the application. Over on the right are 2 women who are winners of the scholarship. And you may recognize the woman on the bottom because she learned about this scholarship here at one of these meetings. And she worked for the council before she became a teacher. She's been awarded the scholarship twice, 2019 and 2020. She's one of our really prize winners. And you'll notice also that the applications, the deadline's March 11. So we are dispersing these throughout the communities, as I said, and hoping that women who really have a need will apply. And we have 7 scholarships to be awarded, so we have a good bunch of them. And last year we had 19 applications. So if you know anybody who might need to take advantage of this, I hope you'll let them know it's available.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a few people that know how to get on social media. So I'm assuming they're going to help get the word out for us as well.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Lisa.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
As a resident of Quail Creek, may I just take a moment to say how proud I am of the women of Quail Creek for the work that you all do both in and out of the community. It's a marvel to see, and you really do an outstanding amount of work making sure that Quail Creek is part of the broader community of Sarita, and I certainly thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you.
I'm much more impressed by the women of Quail Creek than some of the men of Quail Creek.
Hey,
but that's just
let's leave this alone now.
Just my personal observation.
Thank you, Mayor.
On there. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I say something
yes,
real quick?
absolutely.
I just want to say Marisa's very dear to my heart, so thank you. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thanks for being here. That's the only call to the public card. If anybody else like to address the council? Seeing no motion, I will declare the call to public closed. And now we come to council, town manager, brief summary of events, current events. Debbie, do you have anything? No, Simon? Melissa? Bill? Gil?
Thank you, but no.
Okay, thanks. The one thing I had is this Saturday is the 27th annual Sarita Classic Car Show, and very excited that it's going to be moving up to Veterans Memorial Park, running from 10 to 3. And my dad was in the auto industry his whole life, so I'm very excited to help in any way I can with the judging. Brings back a lot of fond memories. And Gil, I just wanted to thank you for arranging the presentation we had at Quail Creek about the road. It was very, very well attended, so I appreciated your effort. And staff, obviously, I'd rather have staff doing it. You helped arrange it. So thanks to all staff that helped.
It's hard to herd 300 people into a small room, I tell you.
Yeah,
Not
absolutely.
easy.
So I'm really happy about that. Mr. Mariotti?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We do have a lot of events coming up over the next month. You'd referred to the one this Saturday, the Classics Car Show. On Saturday, February 5th at 5 p.m., we have a concert at the lake over at Sarita Lake Park. And then on Saturday, February 26th, which will be before our next meeting, and hence that's why we're talking about it now, is the Let's Fly event, which is a kite flying festival, and that will be over at the North Santa Cruz Park between 1 and 4 p.m. So any Sarita resident that's interested in running for the town council can schedule an appointment with our town clerk to pick up information and to go over any questions that they may have, and we would just suggest that they place a call and make an appointment with the town clerk's office. And then in other exciting news regarding the Quail Crossing Boulevard Extension project, the bridge footings for that project will start in early February, so we're going to see more construction activity out there. And more exciting, Beth was very excited about this, and she called me around 5 o'clock tonight to let me know that Union Pacific approved plans for the signal and railroad crossing at Nogales Highway and Quail Crossing Boulevard.
And that's usually the biggest hurdle that we have to overcome.
Indeed. We still don't know the overall costs associated with that, but we got their blessing, so that's a huge milestone for us.
Great,
And
thank
that
you.
concludes my report.
And just as a reminder, our next regularly scheduled meeting is Monday, February 28th, but I anticipate having a special meeting this Friday, beginning at 3, with certainly one of the items would be the town manager and potentially additional items yet to come, but just wanted to remind everybody of that. Not officially. Yeah, no, but put it on there now. 3. Item number 9 is the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. And now we come to item number 10, Madam Clerk.
Presentation and discussion of the fiscal year 2021 audit results and any findings.
Thank you. Mr. Mariotti?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. During the last legislative session, the legislature passed House Bill 2906, which requires our independent auditors to actually present the audit findings during a regularly scheduled council meeting. So this is the first time that we've actually had that, at least in my tenure with the town. So I'll let Mr. Osuch, who is the principal on our audit, take it over from here. Dennis?
All right. Thank you, AC. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me. And as AC had mentioned, this is the first time that we're presenting to Council the audit reports, but in the past, we've always presented the results to the Finance Committee. But due to the new law, we are presenting this under an action item for approval. So I've got a presentation, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we'll go through a brief presentation that I've got here. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to go through the numbers of the financial statements, but rather I'm going to talk a little bit about the process related to the financial statements, and then I'll open it up for any questions at the end, and I'll go through some of the other reports that are issued as well. So let me move on. So these are the reports that we issued. The first one, which is the governance communication, really encompasses a lot of the information that I'm going to talk about today. So typically we provide in writing this communication that talks about our responsibilities as well as management's, and then talk about some of the specifics within the financial statement, some significant items. But we'll cover most of that today in the presentation. The annual comprehensive annual financial report, this is the actual bulk of the financial statements. This is what we're providing an opinion on, and I'll talk a little bit more detailed on that. The single audit report, this is the major federal programs that we look at. So this is all of the federal funds that are spent during the year. We issue 2 reports associated with that, and I'll talk about each one of those in a little bit more detail. And then the final 2 reports are the highway user revenue report and the annual expenditure limitation report, and I'll talk about those as well. So just a real high level what our audit looks like. Generally, we break it up into 2 pieces. One is preliminary field work and a final field work. So our preliminary field work is generally getting an understanding of the organization, looking at internal controls associated with the organization, as well as doing some of our compliance and control testing over the major federal programs. And then what we refer to as final work is really where we do the meat of the audit, which is confirmation of account balances. We do our detailed tested transactions. This is where we're gathering and we're performing an audit to be able to provide an opinion on the financial statements themselves. Like last year, we did not perform any of the work on site. It was all done remotely. We have set up a portal that allows the town to provide our requested information, upload it to a secure portal where we're able to do a lot of that audit. And then so that was about 2 weeks where we combined the preliminary and final field work together. We performed that in October and November. And then the single audit field work was about 1 week, which we performed in November of 2021. And then just give you an idea of what that looks like. Our actual hours for the audit were about 275 hours. We had budgeted about 280, so we came pretty much right on budget with that. So these are all the reports, just real quickly at a glance. Some of the key things in the governance communications, we talk about significant estimates. There are estimates that go into the financial statements. So these are depreciation, the value of the investments, the allowance for uncollectibles, and then you've got your other post-employment benefits and pension benefits and compensated absences. And when I say that they're estimates, these are either estimates that are done by a third party in the case of the other post-employment benefits and pension benefits, or it's based on, for example, with the allowance for uncollectibles, based on historical information calculated by management. And we audit that, we look at that and test that to determine, whether those are valued properly. We didn't have any difficulties in performing the audit. We had no uncorrected misstatements. And what that is basically if we identify adjustments that are required, but they're either not material or, they're not material and we're, so far along in the audit that, we make a recommendation, but management prefers not to record those, we would disclose those uncorrected misstatements, but we didn't have any of those. But I will tell you that it's very common to have uncorrected misstatements. I would probably say 90% of our clients have those, but we just didn't have any this year. We had no material audit adjustments. So these would be audit adjustments that we propose as the auditors to management because we found an error within the financial statements, and it was a significant dollar amount that we would have proposed, but we did not have any of those and no disagreements with management. I'll talk a little bit more about the annual comprehensive financial report, but really, big picture, we issued what's called an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion on the financial statements. And then, as I mentioned, the single audit report, we have 2 reports that we issued, and I'll talk a little bit about those further in the presentation. For the HERF examination report and the annual expenditure implementation report, same thing, we issued unmodified or clean opinions with those. Both of those are compliance-based, and I'll talk about what we look at in relation to those as we get to those reports. So the annual comprehensive financial report, just a couple of things I wanted to mention related to this. We're performing an audit of the basic financial statements. So when you look at the financial statements, you'll see it's broken up into different sections. And so the audit is really focused on the basic financial statements, which are the first set of financial statements that you'll see in the report, and then the notes to the financial statements that follow that. And then we provide what's called an in relation to opinion on the combining statements, which are essentially all the non-major funds. And when I say that we issue an in relation to, I'm saying it's we're giving an opinion that they're fairly stated in relation to the basic financial statements themselves. So we're auditing those in the aggregate. And then, excuse me, there's a few reports or a few sections in there that we disclaim an opinion, which means we don't give an opinion on that. But we do read the information for consistency with what's reported in the financial statements, as well as compare it to prior year data. So the information that we don't give an opinion on are the required supplementary information, the introductory section, and the statistical section. We don't give an opinion for a couple of reasons. One, we're not required to, but that's not the most important reason. The most important reason really is a lot of the data that's included, for example, in the statistical section and the supplementary information shows historical trend data. So it has about 10 years worth of data that's in there. And obviously it wouldn't be feasible to go back and audit 10 years worth of data. So we are reviewing that for consistency within the financial statements, but again, not giving an opinion on that. When we do the audit of the financial statements themselves, we do it on a risk-based approach. And I know when I bring up the word risk, it always sounds like a bad word, but every organization has risks, and it's not a bad thing, but it is our job to identify where those risks are. And what we're looking for is, obviously we're looking for risk related to whether fraud could occur, but more importantly, well, I wouldn't say more importantly, but probably what we use more than even related to the fraud is we look at the risks on how the financial statements could be misstated. And the areas that we identified as the higher risk areas would be management override of controls, revenue recognition, and most specifically related to the valuation, and that's where the allowance for uncollectibles come into play, as well as existence, where we look at cash receipts. Those are some of the higher risk areas that we look at. And then the financial close, because management prepares their own financial report, we do consider that a higher risk, which again is not a bad thing, but it just means that we perform more detailed analysis on certain areas. And then capital assets, valuation and existence. So existence being that do the assets actually exist, and are they being valued properly? And what we focus on mostly with that is completed construction, because that really goes to the value of those assets and how they're being depreciated. And so those are the higher risk areas that we identified. Again, not a bad thing. It just means that those are the areas we identify that we're going to perform more detailed analysis around those areas to get a comfort level in order for us to provide an opinion. The single audit report, as I mentioned, there's two reports that we issued. The first one is the Government Auditing Standards Report, and this is related to the financial statements. So this is what's commonly referred to as the Yellow Book report. Our job is to report any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies related to the financial statements. So we're not giving an opinion on controls, but we are reporting any deficiencies that we identify if they rise to the level of material weakness or significant deficiency. And I'm happy to say that we did not have either one of those that we reported related to the financial statements. The second report is we do give an opinion on. We're giving an opinion on compliance for the major federal programs that we test. And so we do an analysis, determine what the major federal programs are. There are certain criteria that go into making that determination. We look at not only compliance, where we're giving an opinion on compliance, but we look at internal controls over compliance as well. We don't give an opinion on the controls, but again, if we had any type of deficiencies, we would report those deficiencies in internal controls. And then finally, we provide an opinion, in relation to opinion, on the schedule of federal expenditures. So this is the schedule of all of your federal grants, and it's the reported expenditures that were incurred on those federal programs during the year. So the major program that we tested was the Coronavirus Relief Program, which accounted for about $1.9 million in total federal expenditures. The town actually had about $2.7 million in total federal expenditures. So by testing that one program, we basically had 71% coverage. As a low-risk entity, we're only required to test 20%, so we were well over that coverage as far as testing the federal programs. We issued an unmodified or a clean opinion on that with no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses over internal controls. The Highway User Revenue Report, we are providing an opinion on the use of the Highway User Revenue Funds in accordance with Arizona Revised Statutes. And so in order to perform that testing, what we do is we look at the accounts payable disbursements, we test a sample of that, as well as payroll and payroll-related disbursements. And then if there's any transfers made out of the Highway User Revenue Fund to other funds, we look at how those funds were ultimately used to ensure that they complied with statute. And we were able to issue a clean opinion with no findings related to the HERF report as well. And then the last report I'm going to go over is the Annual Expenditure Limitation Report. So this is basically the report where every city and town is subject to an expenditure limitation amount, whether that is through the Economic Estimates Commission or it's a voter-approved alternative expenditure limitation amount. You're subject to that expenditure limitation. And there's a reconciliation that goes into that because essentially it's what's subject to the expenditure limitation amount are funds that are spent with current financial resources. And then there are certain things that can be excluded based on statute within there. So there's a reconciliation that reconciles the total expenditures subject to the expenditure limitation report back to the audited financial statements. And so we were able to reconcile all of those amounts back to the financial statements, and we tested the additions and subtractions in that reconciliation as well as the exclusions for allowability. And we were able to issue a clean opinion on the annual expenditure limitation report as well. So that really covers all of the reports that were issued as part of the June 30th, 2021 audit. And first I'd like to thank you for allowing me to present virtually, but also open it up to any members of council that might have any questions.
Thank you. Obviously, we're very pleased. Thank you, AC and the team, for doing such a great job. I'm just curious, out of the 91 cities and towns in Arizona, how typical is no findings, no deficiencies, no anything bad? Is that kind of the norm, or do you usually find things depending on the size of the different communities?
I would probably say that having no findings would probably be, as probably the upper percentage of being one of the better cities or in towns. Generally we will have maybe one finding. We have several cities and towns where things happen. Findings pop up even in the cleanest of cities and towns, and so sometimes a finding does occur maybe once every so many years. But I would definitely say that you guys definitely rank as one of the better cities and towns. It's very common for us to find some type of deficiency or an adjustment that we have to make as part of the financial statements, because there's a lot that goes into it.
Right. No, it seems very deep, and so we, again, really appreciate it. Any questions? Bill? Gil? Anybody? Thanks for being here virtually tonight. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next, we move to item number 12. Madam Clerk? Oh,
I believe we're on item 11.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No
I was getting
worries.
ahead of myself.
Item 11, presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding the results and recommendations associated with the employee classification and compensation study performed by HR No Consulting, employee compensation adjustments, and associated budget transfers.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
And would you mind if I made a brief comment?
No.
You sure?
Positive.
I was on the way to the council meeting tonight and driving, and I was listening to the radio. And as a result of that, I've decided to resign from the council. I'm planning to move to the Phoenix area, where I'm going to apply for a police position. I find that I'm going to have moving assistance. I'm going to have a much bigger salary. I almost thought I was going to receive 3 weeks in Mexico free, but it was didn't quite meet the amount. But again, in all seriousness, there are things happening in the world that are having a huge impact on policing in general, and it simply means that we have to do, as I'm sure we plan to do, to really address this issue in some meaningful way. And believe me, I don't have an answer to that right now, but we're going to be working on that the best we can. And thank you for that.
Thank you. I was going to rescind that permission at the beginning, but now I'm okay with it.
All right, all right.
So thank you for that.
When I had you at the radio, didn't I?
You did.
Yeah.
You did.
Hey, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Point of order on that last agenda item. Do we need to approve that, the audit? We don't?
Oh, the audit. Oh, okay. Yeah. I was like, I'm not making a motion to make him a police officer.
Certainly you can approve what I just said. That's perfect, fine.
I'm not going to.
We haven't approved anything you've ever said.
Thank you. And Ms. Silva, thank you for being here virtually this evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I do appreciate you accepting me virtually. I had intended to be in person this evening, but as circumstances have it, I cannot. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. On May 10th, 2021, as the result of a presentation regarding police staffing and compensation, staff received direction from council to examine the competitiveness of the town's pay structure against those organizations with which the town competes for employees. The town last implemented a job classification and employee compensation study in fiscal year 2016. Because of this, the town's overall pay structure has remained largely unchanged over the last almost 7 years, resulting in many jobs falling below market and out of the competitive range. In the interests of independence and transparency, the town requested proposals for qualified firms or individuals to provide consulting services to conduct a town-wide comprehensive employee classification and compensation study. This study includes both a comparison study from relevant regional job markets of employee compensation programs and a comprehensive analysis of the job classifications in the town's pay plan. HR No Consulting was awarded a bid for this project in which the town's current pay structure, job classifications, and market competitiveness would be analyzed against the relevant labor market. This relevant labor market is primarily defined by geographic region and key markets, municipal and other government agencies, and, if applicable, private sector when readily available and effectively comparable. Our goal for this project was to provide the foundation for an appropriate classification and compensation system and pay plan based on current compensation levels for similar public sector employers, municipalities, and local market competitors. In response, HR No has developed a proposed pay plan and salary adjustment recommendations for current employees. While town staff did provide feedback and input throughout the study, all recommendations by HR No are based on their knowledge and expertise of best practices in the areas of classification and compensation. HR No Consulting will now present the results of the market study and associated recommendations.
Thank you. I know this has been a long time coming, so we appreciate the efforts. After we have the presentation, because I know this will be the first time, other than receiving it last night, that we'll have a chance to take a look at it and digest it. But nobody's more important to our town than our town staff. And I've said on multiple occasions, if we're not a safe community, which comes from the hard work by our police department, then we're not going to be able to have conversations about new residential or new retail coming here, as some of the other communities have struggled over the years with that. So please proceed.
Thank you for inviting us. We appreciate that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you'll just have to when talk a little bit closer into the microphone.
Okay.
So just be careful if you're turning around. We won't be able to hear you really well.
Can you hear me now? Is
Yes.
that okay? Do I have control of the slides? No, I don't. Can we go to next slide, whoever controls it?
Yep.
Thank you. So I represent HR No Consultancy. My name is Igor Shagalev, and I'm president, founder, and the principal consultant of the HR No Consultancy. We are independent company that study labor markets, employment analytics, and compensation management practices in Arizona, pretty much practice in California, Colorado, and other states. Next slide, please. So the first, my presentation will comprise of two parts. First part is we will give you an update of labor market and try to explain why council member heard all this news on the radio, and you will hear probably more of that. We actually talk about this in this presentation. And the second part will be the findings and recommendations of our study. So the first question is why do this study? And if we just keep clicking there, why conduct compensation study? I'm going to take this, I guess.
You're going to be tethered to it a little bit, but that'll work.
Is that okay?
Yep.
I hope. Well, keep clicking. Thank you. So, as everybody knows, that a good, valid compensation structure and practice helps to recruit, retain, reward employees, motivate staff, improve workers' satisfaction, controls labor cost, and of course improve overall productivity of the organization, predict future skill requirements. Next slide, please. Just a real outlook of the labor market now. What is happening now is something we haven't seen for many years, many decades. I've been in this business for at least 30 years, and I can tell you that salary increases, and you can see it in our those blocks that represent the state of the labor market. There's 11 million openings in the United States today, meaning companies, municipalities, governments post those jobs and they are unfilled. And there's also decreased number of applicants actually willing to apply for those jobs. And it's now fall below 7 million, on top of the fact that among those 7 million, there's a skill mismatch with those openings. It's very difficult to fill many jobs. Wage compensation compression caused by minimum wage increase are very high. What happens is many organizations now increase minimum wages, and states actually moving forward, increasing those wages rapidly. For many years, the minimum wage was dormant, and last 5 years in Arizona, for example, minimum wage grew by 59%. Some organizations actually institute their own minimum wage. Like, for example, City of Tucson now implemented $15 minimum wage rule. Means there's no job that will be hired below $15. What actually happened is that it created what we call wage compression. It pushed other jobs up higher. Workers retiring. There's about 2 million more retirees in 2021 that was expected. And of course, disproportionate industrial growth. Some of the industries grow faster, others actually retreating. And wage inflations, as I already mentioned, are the highest in 40 years. And I'll explain what we mean by wage inflations. If we can go to next slide, please. In here, you actually see wage increases, historical outlook, year by year, projected and actual. If you see the blue line, it is actual increases over year in all civilian employers and employee workers, for all civilian workers in the United States. That chart is tracked by statistics tracked by Bureau of Labor Statistics, Department of Labor, and other consulting organizations, including World at Work, Mercer, etc. We actually collect and aggregate this data on monthly basis. You can see that generally last 10 years, the increases, and what it means is that that is wage inflation tracked by ECI, Employer Cost Index. Just like products, just like CPI tracks inflation of goods and services, ECI tracks inflation of payroll. So you can see that generally it was below 3%. In 2021, it went up to 4.2, and that data is up to 12 months trailing September. And we do know now that in October and November, that number went up. Next slide, please. In here, actually, you see aggregated data from Employer Cost Index from Bureau of Labor Statistics that HR now tracks, again, on monthly basis, and we pull those we actually pull this by occupations, occupational groups, and by industries. In this case, you can see that service occupations, for example, went up 6.1% up to September, 12 months trailing. Management, business, financial, 3.6%. Transportation, materials moving by 5%. And again, all workers, as we saw in the previous slide, 4.2%. Next slide, please. Interesting trend is that because of minimum wage compressions and because of the majority of work done in production and in healthcare support and in other industries, warehousing, transportation, those industries that actually are growing, the majority of this work done by support staff. And that blue line there actually shows bottom 25% of income occupations. What it means is that your, for example, medical assistant or administrative assistant would be paid less generally than your management and executive professional level jobs. Those bottom 25% actually went up higher than top 25%. That trend, again, that never happened before, and it is happening now because of those factors that we already discussed. They have to be taken into consideration in our analysis, and they were. Next slide, please. You can see, can we have another click? You can see here, this is project conceptual framework. So we now moving to what we did and how we did this study. First of all, we based our study on relevant labor market. What it means is that HR&O actually service organizations and municipalities throughout the United States. But we wouldn't compare your town to larger municipalities in California, for example. We did, for that purpose, we do outline and identify relevant labor market. And generally, simply explaining that concept is this is where you lose your qualified talent and this is where you draw your qualified people for your organization. That is your relevant labor market. And if you lose your people to just, for example, to town of Sierra Vista or city of Tucson, that this is your relevant labor market. Another concept is job worth. We're trying to understand what's the value of the job in the labor market, and is this value going up or down in the last few years. And just for example, we can tell you with confidence that the highest value added jobs were, for many reasons, were warehousing, transportation, healthcare, police, and so on and so forth. And those jobs typically, because they gain value, they become more complex, they become more accountable, and actually the increases follow that trend. Market alignment, what we're trying to do is we take the range of the job for each job and we compare it to the range of similar job in your relevant labor market. And then we try to align range of town of Sarita with that relevant labor market range. And of course, wage penetration. Once we know what does this job pay from minimum to maximum with that range, the next step is to understand where does the person who you hire belong within that range, or employee who is doing the job in this job classification. If we have range of, let's say, minimum of $20 and maximum of $30, we need to identify where each employee belongs within that range. Do they belong at the bottom of the range, at the 25th percentile, 75th, or the maximum? And that, for that purpose, we use concept of wage penetration, which I'll explain in a few slides. Next slide, please. This is actually to identify and to support the statement about rapid minimum wage growth. You can see that in the last 5 years, Arizona increased minimum wage by 59%, and Maine increased minimum wage by 70%. Again, the previous 5 years, and we have that data as well, didn't have this much rapid growth, this much growth at all. It was more or less dormant. Next slide, please. This is an important slide to show why it was important to identify your relevant labor market properly and also understand what's going on with changing job values in the labor market. This is the study conducted by Mission Square Research Institute in 2021. What they did was they polled most of the U.S. municipalities, about 288 cities and towns in the United States, and they polled their HR departments and leadership asking what is the most difficult jobs to recruit. And you can see that 71% of municipalities answered nursing. You can see that police, dispatch, corrections, building inspectors, skilled trades are in the top of hard-to-fill positions. When we did our study, we paid closer attention to those jobs to understand what's the market dynamics for these occupations and how we can incorporate it in our recommendations. Next slide. Any questions so far? This is the process flow, how we do the job. We discuss project scope and methodologies. We explain all this before we even start collecting data from the labor market. Then we study job description. We have to understand what does this job do and what is required, what kind of qualities one needs to have to be able to do this job. We call this process job analysis. Job description typically is the main document that explains what is the job. And to know that is critical because we then go to the labor market and compare this job to similar job of similar value, of similar functionality in the labor market. So we conduct job benchmarking and market analysis. So let's say that you have professional level accountant, we go to the labor market, we find accountant, professional level that requires bachelor's degree, and we compare the wages. We assign jobs to pay grade after we collected that data. And of course, we analyze employees' pay after that and decide what employees' position within that range. The last phase is, we are in the last phase now. We make recommendation, we document all the findings, and we give your HR department and your leadership all backup statistics and information that we collected. Next slide. So, sources of market data used in this project. This is our relevant labor market. What we did was we discussed it with your leadership, and we decided collaboratively that City of Tucson, City of Oro Valley, Sierra Vista, Pima County, Town of Marana are your relevant labor market. On top of this, when we're talking about police, we also wanted to look what does DPS do. And assuming that you may lose people to DPS, you may hire somebody from DPS, so we included them into the mix of that relevant labor market for police only. But we didn't stop there. We also wanted to see, because those 5 cities, 4 cities in the county, they don't represent the entire labor market. There's also all kind of agencies, government agencies, nonprofit organizations, government entities that like districts, fire districts, or water districts, that where you may also lose your people. And for that purpose, we also use broad salary surveys with much broader sample. We use those surveys, and those are not self-populated, self-completed online surveys. Those are professional surveys that we actually purchase every year, done by professional companies, that reputable organizations that do this for living, those surveys. Economic Research Institute, Comp Analyst, Milliman, and some other surveys. Now, we used government segment and mostly Southern Arizona or City of Tucson. Next slide, please. Then, once we collect data, this is how we actually assign job to pay grade. If we can click, if this table on the right is considered to be a pay structure, you can see that the minimum, for example, of one of the grades is 2420 and the maximum 3630. And you can see that the data for labor market was 3175. That data, those parameters of the labor market for accountant fall between 2 pay grades. And that's the decision we make. We assign job to appropriate pay grade to make sure that your pay grade corresponds to market range. Next slide, please. So in this case, you can go up, you can go down. I mean, typically, the next step, which grade we assign, would depend on internal equity, on other jobs within the series. For example, you can see accountant P2, P3, M1, P2 meaning full range professional job, P3 meaning senior accountant, M1 meaning supervisor, first line supervisor or manager, and of course M2 is functional manager. Can we go to next slide? We also reviewed pay structure of town of Sarita. Are we okay on time?
Yes.
I have just few slides left. We also reviewed your pay structure, and we found that pay structure of town of Sarita was acceptable, but a bit outdated. One issue that we found that could be improved and actually would help you to make a better career progression for employees and motivate employees and improve hiring ranges was the bandwidth of the range. So if you, for example, see that in this case, let's take the very first grade, if you can see it, grade 101, the minimum of the grade is $12.80, which is minimum wage today, as of January 1st. And the maximum you can see is $17.28. Now, that range from minimum to maximum is 35%. As you can see, BW mean bandwidth. As you can see, we increase the bandwidth with every consecutive grade. It goes to 40%, then 50%, and that is in theory called fan open range structure. The reason we increase those ranges, because when you look at the labor and you study labor market, the simple support jobs that require high school diploma and can be trained on the job usually have narrow band, narrow width. Professional jobs, because there's so much variety, variability of skill and accountability, actually have larger, wider band. The simple example would be your CFO, Chief Financial Officer. Those jobs typically are size sensitive, and they depend on the size of the revenue of the organization. Now, you may have a CFO that oversees organization with $500 million revenue or $5 billion revenue. Of course, that range accommodates typically. So in current pay structure for town of Sarita, all grades were having bandwidths of 45%. And what we did was we just expanded it for professional jobs. You also can see that between each pay grade, there's 5% separation. That adds structure in case you promote people from one job to another, or you want to create, which we did, want to create a series of classification. Let's say that you have a series of accountants. You have entry-level accountant, just with bachelor's degree, no experience. Then you have full-range professional accountant, then senior level, then supervisor. They all will be separated, like from entry to journey. We probably would recommend 10% separation, which would be 2 grades apart. Between senior and supervisor, we would probably recommend at least 3 grade separation, which is 3 grades separate, which is 15% apart. That kind of 5% separation would give you flexibility to create those series and motivate people to move to the next step. Next slide, please. This is actually a recommendation of moving your jobs from old structure to new structure. You can see, for example, this is just an excerpt of the study. Your HR department, your leadership, has actually complete list of our recommended pay grade changes. We assign jobs to pay grades based on that principle. What is their worth in the labor market? What is the range? And we try to find similar range in the new pay structure. If you take planner, for example, currently your planner starts at 54,593. And the midpoint is 66,877, and the maximum 79. In the new pay structure, they still start at $54,000. However, the midpoint is higher and the maximum is higher. You can also see systems analyst starts at $51,000 for 159. We recommend at least $54,630, and the midpoint goes up by $5,000. Can we go to the next slide, please? This is just an excerpt recommendation for police. You can see, and let's take a look at police officer. you can see that current midpoint is $59,000. And by the way, to get to midpoint, it probably takes a longer than what we recommend in our proposed career progression study. Based on relevant labor market, that job would be moving to grade 116 in the new pay structure with midpoint of, I believe, $65,000. It will start at 52 and go up to 65. Our recommendation is that the employees should move to the midpoint at least in 7 years, not more than 7 years, which, by the way, is the best practice in the labor market, the way we see that. Next slide, please. After assigning jobs to new pay grades, so what next? And again, the next step is we propose two options, how actually you determine employee position within that range. Can we go? So one option is we maintain the same wage penetration, which is the same position of employee within the range today, and we just transition the same position in a new pay range. What it means is, for example, if your employee today in the middle of the pay range, in the midpoint, which let's say if a minimum is $20 and maximum $30, $25 is right in the middle and it's 50th percentile of the range. That is we call wage penetration, which is how far employee penetrate, the wage penetrate within that range. We then apply exact same percentage, 50% in the new pay structure. So employee who, let's say today is at $25, in the new pay structure, is if the midpoint of new pay structure is $30, that employee moves from 25 to 30, maintaining the same wage penetration, the same position within the range. The second option is a little more complicated. It also a little bit more aggressive and has a little bit higher price tag. It's a little costly. So we develop career pay progression that will determine employee position based on experience or time in the position. And that system is based on regression, meaning the employee growth is expedited to the minimum, to the midpoint, and then slows down after the midpoint. And for first years, employee receives higher percentage increase than for consecutive years. So it's basically looks like the curve, a regression curve. Next slide, please. Can we click? Yep. So just visually to explain and to show how it's going to look, the option number one. You can see that employee today, that blue dot is your employee. And you can see that that's probably 35th percentile of the range. In a new pay structure, that pay grade will be higher. You can see that box actually higher. The minimum, the edge of the box is higher, and the maximum is higher. And employee will transition to exact same position, but in a new pay structure. Next slide, please. That is the second option. Again, Town of Sarita doesn't have to make this decision today, but those are two progressive options that we offer, and we can, it wouldn't take us much time once you made the decision to actually calculate new rates and pay increases for all employees. You can see that, for example, this is not a step system, but we broke it down into steps or years in the position or years in the experience, just to show how far they go the first years. You can see if you have 0 years of experience, you get to the minimum of the pay grade. But if you have 1 year, you immediately get to 16.6 percentile. But then if you have 2 years, you don't get to 32nd percentile. You don't double it. You go to 26th percentile. So you see that curve actually creates this situation where employees with less experience receive higher credit for each year of experience than employee with higher level of experience. That does not mean that experienced people are underpaid. All it means is that once you reach, you expedite their growth to midpoint. Once they reach the midpoint, which is aligned with the market 50th percentile, then you just slow them down. What it does, if you follow that system in few years, we did the statistical studies, it actually doesn't cost you more, but it creates better retention, better satisfaction, and mitigates turnover. Next slide, please. Recommendations and costs. First, we would like to, leadership and council members, adopt new redesigned pay structure if they decide to do that. We transition all town of Sarita jobs, then job classification to new pay structure. That model already created. All you have to do is review and administer 2-3% across the board salary increases to all employees first. The reason we think it's important is because you saw the movement in the labor market. The increases now are 5% or more. For some jobs, it's more than 10%. We're talking about when Bureau of Labor Statistics calculate the aggregate average for all civilian employers, and it goes to 4.2 or 5%, that's a lot. What it tells us, for example, and we know that for fact because we study this daily, what we know for fact that, for example, salaries of medical assistants in Tucson area in southern Arizona increased 12% in 2021. Transportation and warehousing increased about 10% in southern Arizona. We then, of course, select method of transitioning employees to new pay structure, plan additional market adjustments to eligible employees. So if you apply general increases to everybody first, let's say 2 or 3%, then your market adjustment will take care of the rest. So some people who still below the market, below their target rate, they will be adjusted on top of that. The actual cost will, applying general increase first will not cost you more because we identify target rate for each employee. Let's say the employee today is at the minimum of the pay grade and makes $20. And we decided, the system actually identified that employee's position is 50th percentile. So employees must move from $20, let's say, to $25. That's extreme. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make this example. We don't want to create this expectation. But let's just say, for sake of example and argument, that $5 is the target where they should be in the labor market. What it means is that if they apply for a job anywhere else in city of Tucson, this is what they're going to get, $25. Whether you give them 2% or not, you have to bring them to 20. Well, you don't have to. Sorry about that. You don't have to. There's no obligation to pay market wages. But if you want to pay competitive wages, you still want to bring them to at least close to the target. Maybe not in 1 year. Maybe you will phase it. So 2 to 3% will just mitigate that gap. Next slide. This is a very busy slide, and I'll try to navigate you through this. This is last slide, by the way. Navigate you through costs. This is pretty much your price tag of the adjustments. Let's say that and this is based on the roster that was developed, I think, 2 months ago or months ago. So these numbers may not be exact. If you only give all employees 2%, you see column called increase percent. Then the 12 months cost would be $191,000. And when you add ERE, employer-related expense, like FICA, like workers' comp, we would add generally 26% on top of that. Now, your cost of premiums of healthcare not going to change because they don't change based on employee wages on rate. Monthly cost of base increase would be about $16,000, and monthly cost of increase with ERE will be $20,000. So you can calculate how much it's going to cost you. If it's 3% increase for all employees, the cost is $287,000. Now, if all employees transition to their target position based on new pay structure and market adjustments that we recommend based on lagging of the market, that will cost you $746,000 for all employees, and of course $940,000 with 26% of ERE expense. The average increase, 7.8 or 8.1, really irrelevant because normally you don't average percentages. Even if this average percent in the next next line would be 8.1, that does not mean that employees actually make more increases. What it means is that there will be more outliers on higher end of increase. So don't make your decision just based on percentage increase. Now, if we look at employees without exclude police, and let's say that police should be reviewed separately, you can see the bottom 4 rows show 5% increase, 10% increase option, and then we have 2 options. If you decide to bring employees based on the target rate, option number 1, transition all employees in the same position within new pay ranges, the same wage penetration. That's going to cost you, for police, $385,000. However, if you use wage penetration, it's going to cost you less. And the reason being is because the bottom employees will receive higher increases and the top employees will receive smaller increases. So that would be decision to make. You also can see that we broke down employees without police as a separate group. Those are considerations that you have to make and include in your decisions. Any questions?
Yes, may I?
Yes.
I don't know how to go about this, but it is the form of a long-term question. Right now, the major urban areas are acting like a vacuum. They're sucking up police from the rural and suburban areas at fairly high numbers. And in my view, we could go out there tomorrow and offer our police force a 10% increase, and we'd still be losing officers who are going to be going to a 20% increase in urban areas. Not only are they getting a 20% interest, they're getting benefits such as faster move up, help with housing, advanced training that costs funds, etc. There are two types of cost. We are in competition with that. The report that you've done, I think, is great. It is one very much needed in terms of our employee base. But this vacuum that now exists and is going to exist for a while, maybe for quite a while, is something that we're going to have to tackle and figure out. Because we can't continue to lose our best police officers, our police officers, I think of them all as best. We can't continue to lose those employees to sizable increases that are being paid in other areas, plus the side benefits that are being accrued. It's a heck of an attractive package. And that to me is where we really have to give some thought. We can't just base it on the dollar value or the percentage increase alone. So my question is, how do we tackle this particular problem? We have to find a way to deal with this. We can't keep losing police or any authorities into the major urban areas who are really they're picking us apart. And that's an existing fact. It's not a rumor. So anything you could offer in that regard, please.
Well, two things. First of all, we certainly will be happy to continue studying those perks and benefits that they receive on top of base compensation. And we would be able to tell you, for example, that City of Tucson pays better medical premiums, or they pay housing, and what is that? And when you have that knowledge, you can adjust your employment practices. You can increase benefits, or whatever you decide. At least what least we can do is to collect the data. What is it today? Now, about that they offer 20% more. Today, City of Tucson, those five municipalities that we show, the aggregated average of their midpoint is $65,000. What I propose for City of Sarita is that you bring to this $65,000 your employees faster. What it means is that, if you police officer with 2 years and you go to City of Tucson, you probably will get 15th to 20th percentile. We don't know exactly. They don't, at this point, they don't have that aggressive curve where they identify employee target rate. They're working on it now. It was my experience that when you bring employees to midpoint faster, normally the turnover goes down. One important, very important point I'd like to make is all studies and all statistics suggest that you hire employee in the first year, in the first 18 months, the probability of them leaving is 52%. It's like, you can line them up, all your new hires, and tell them every second person in this row, every second person will not be here in 18 months. That's, not a big motivational speech. But if you create this kind of pay progression and career progression, and they know that they're gonna get to midpoint faster, you can mitigate turnover. And all studies, again, suggest that if you keep them for 3 years, you keep them. The probability of turnover after 3 years goes to like 0.00 whatever, as opposed to first 18 months 52%, 3 years 65%, and so on and so forth. We'll be happy to continue the study and help you identify perks and any additional variable pay that this is the study based on base pay.
And could you use the same data point that you use for Tucson? Because when I attended the State of the State, the governor mentioned, increasing the compensation to DPS, which I know is one of our vacuums. Where is that midpoint with DPS?
DPS is highest of them all. And DPS, what happened with DPS is in the July 1st of this year, they got 10% increase. All police. Now, on top of that, just recently, and we included this in your study, by the way, those numbers. They announced that all DPS troopers They call them, they call police officers, troopers, state troopers. All state troopers will receive stipend of 15%. I'm not sure if you can compete with this, but what it means is that, and we don't know, it's called temporary stipend. We don't know what it means.
It means
We
when the
do know
COVID
that-
money stops, so does the stipend.
Sorry?
When the COVID money stops coming into the state, so does the stipend.
As of now, we looked at major recruitment agencies, and we found that 15% already incorporated in hiring rate ranges.
So taking out the stipend, where did the DPS fall on that midpoint? If TPD is 65 and you're thinking 65, where is DPS? at
Without
that?
stipend,
Without stipend?
66, 67.
Okay.
Yeah, very close to that. But the stipend, and we don't know why they call it stipend. Well, they have a
Probably 'cause
reason
it's
to
gonna
call
go
it
away at
stipend.
some point.
Right.
Right. Yeah, that's what I would assume.
But then again, this is why we create the weighted average. Somebody is slightly higher, somebody is slightly lower. We're giving you average numbers.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So the administrative general increase that you're recommending, the 2 to 3% is where you said for all employees. And then for police, you were, just when we broke it out, the suggestion, or at least what you wrote in your graph, was 5 to 10%. Are those based on where we're at for beginning salaries in general, police versus the rest of our employees? Is that
Yeah,
what that was based on?
Generally, you're 10% below the market.
Okay. And then
Now-
I'm sorry, did you have more?
I'm just follow up on your question. You're 10% below the market, but that does not mean that every employee is 10% below the market.
Well, sure.
Some employees are more than 10%, some less.
Right. And then my second question is, are you suggesting then that for that maintaining and to get to that medium point faster, you're saying that the progression curve is the best way to do that, as opposed to plugging them in where they're at this point? Is that what I understood?
Both will work well, both. Progression curve works best when you base it on actual experience relevant to the job. Otherwise, if you only count years with City of Sarita, that you will have some discrepancies. But yeah, this is my favorite. We are developed this approach, and we implemented this approach in multiple for-profit, non-profit municipalities. We used it very heavily in healthcare, and
did you see
it
those-
works.
Go ahead.
Did you see the same results that you hypothesized? That because, I've heard the same thing, when you're new, if you can get them, whether it's teachers or anybody else, if you can get them in the culture of where you are, you're more likely. So when those were implemented in healthcare or others, did you see what you thought would happen actually did happen?
We track, yeah. I'm going to make an example, which is now difficult to check, but those are hard numbers. I still have some spreadsheets kept from that statistical, from that area. In 2009, we did the study, we implemented this to Tucson Medical Center.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about 2,000 nurses. And it's very important that nurses are placed within the range based on how good they are in their job. But it's very difficult also to understand the performance of nurse because of the nature of service work and because of procedural standards. So the only assumption we could make is the more experience you have in nursing, the better job you do. The turnover in 2009, it's tracked, again, I have the records of it, the turnover was 19%. Ernst & Young study suggested that minimizing 1% of turnover for the organization size of TMC, which was at that time 500 million revenue, net revenue. would save about $500,000. In 2010, I was still with TMC. We still working with TMC today. In 2010, the turnover in all organizations was 11%, 19% to 11%. It was, in my experience, it was unprecedented. And that's what we did. We brought everybody, every single day. And by the way, nobody complained. Once they understand that this is scientific, this is consistent, this is not subjective, there's absolutely no subjectivity in it. It's a formula. You have 7 years, you get to midpoint, period. You have 6 years, you're below the midpoint. You have 8 years, you're above the midpoint. We had absolutely no complaints, and the turnover went down.
And could I just follow up one more time, Melissa? So in the case of that, because, what if you had 7 years experience as opposed to somebody with 3 years experience who would be considered more of a fast burner? Did that negate the ability just based on experience? Did that in any area work against you? Because if you're just placing them based on years experience, you can have less years experience and maybe be outperforming somebody with more experience.
Yes. I don't know. The answer is yes. It does create this flaw, always. But the thing is, I've been in this business for a very long time and developed so many performance-based pay systems. And I'm a strong believer that performance-based systems do not work. And the reason they do not work is because 80% of American economy is service economy. And when you look at nurses at their job, if you dissect their job, there's not much you can see who performs. The conduct, yes. If I'm late, I have to be out. If I'm late for procedure or I'm late for work. But the performance, it's so procedural, so regulated. Like you have a pill, and you have to give to patient that pill within 15 minutes after dispensing. And if you don't, you violated the standard. And you have to see this patient swallow the pill. How do you decide who is doing better job? Is it because you did it in 13 minutes, but you still did the job? Mayo Clinic, in 2012, I was asking them, actually, working with their HR department, asking why they do not have pay for performance. And Mayo Clinic is one of the best research and acute hospitals in the United States, in the world, by the way. They did not. And they told me they gave me a very simple answer, which I remembered, wrote down, and carried with me ever since. They said, how do you define performance? If you don't perform, you're out of Mayo Clinic. You're not here. If you perform, you perform. So we only have two performance. You perform or you don't perform. And they don't have pay for performance raises. They don't do that.
May I come in?
Well, I had promised Melissa, and I've been interrupting her, and then I'll go to Debbie, and then I'll go back to you. If that's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess because in my mind that progression curve was a bit subjective, but what you're saying is it's based solely on years of service. There is no subjectivity to it. Is that correct?
No subjectivity, except that if you hired 2 years ago, but you have 20 years of experience, you will have perception of inequity.
I guess then I have a question for staff or HR, maybe, I don't know, but because when we hire people, we don't always hire them at the introductory wage, especially I think for police. We place them based on that performance, past history, work per, yeah. So wouldn't that already be, so it should then level out. Like if we've placed them because they had 5 years of previous experience, we placed them wherever they were at in that spectrum.
If that's the case, then keeping them, if you did it consistently, hire people based on their previous experience, then option number 1, I think, where you maintain the
same
exact
position
same
and new pay
position
range.
would
Okay.
work better for you.
Okay,
Debbie?
thank you.
So I have a question for the finance director. Is he here? I know the
I
town
think he
manager's
is.
here, but is the finance director here?
Change your hat,
Members of
AC.
the council, the finance director is here.
So my question is, let's say we go with the highest rate recommended across the board for everybody. Where does that put us financially?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, yeah, that's a good question. You know, this information was distributed on Sunday night, although we've been sort of working through the process. And there's a lot of work involved in this, and we've got some last-minute updates as well that were important to include them into the report, such as what DPS is doing. We're sort of delayed where we were hoping to be before this meeting, but haven't fully had a chance to kind of go through and look at all the financial implications yet. But I certainly think that that's something that we should do before implementing any program. The philosophy and approach taken to get to this point, I think staff can get behind that, but how we roll this out, I think we probably need to spend at least a couple days going through things. We could have a few more conversations that we haven't been able to have up to this point in time to sort of develop an implementation plan.
I got to let Councilmember Lusk, I promised him.
No, he's already talked once. Thank you for the presentation, excellent data. What's missing right now is that it has not gone to the chief of police, the finance director, the town manager, and HR. We should not be making any decisions at this point until they digest it and come with their recommendation of how we implement.
Well, and that's where, when I was alluding to.
So we don't have to get wrapped around the axle on this right now.
Yeah, but we definitely want to be digesting it, because my druthers would be, I suspected getting it late last night wasn't enough time, but I really would like to, you know, by Friday, when we have our special meeting, that would be my, you know, my recommendation, because, you know, we do have some hemorrhaging going on, especially in the PD, and we've been waiting this for a long time. And I think it's of the utmost importance.
Absolutely.
I'm okay to Friday. AC, and then I'll let Gil go, but AC, do you think, this will give us a chance to digest it. I had a couple questions for the chief, back to Bill's point, but do you think we could be a little more digestible and ready to go on Friday?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I do believe that implementing something soon is absolutely necessary. So yeah, we'll pull all the stops to do our due diligence on implementation plans and get a handle of the costs and have it ready to go.
Councilmember Lusk.
Thank you. Okay, on Friday, we can come up with some immediate concerns. Unfortunately, our issue here is long-term, and that's not going to resolve the long-term issue. And that, we need some help from you, in the sense of who are we competing with? And I mean, what you're seeing here is not what is Phoenix paying and what are they doing to their police force. If that's a vacuum, we need to know what the vacuum is doing so we know who we're competing against and what we're trying to offset. The danger in some of this is we're going to wind up with a 3-tier system. Sarita, Sierra Vista will be in Tier 1. Tucson, maybe Yuma, they'll be in Tier 2, and then Phoenix and Scottsdale and Gilbert, they'll be in Tier 3, meaning that each of those tiers has a separate price, a separate value, a separate payment. Now, once that happens, the Tier 1 is going to be able only to attract police who are out of the academy and who are starting. They're not going to worry about 3 years. They're not going to worry about 2 years. In a year and a half, they're going to have enough experience to start moving to Tier 2 or 3. And that is going to be a constant work
Turnover.
for our people here in terms of dealing with that, always having a lot of new employees to train and to put into play. That's a big expense to us. So in the long term, we need some further advice and counsel. The council here has some very difficult decisions to make. We can make a few on Friday, but we have to look at the long term here, because that's going to eat our lunch if we're not careful. And that is going to require some larger decisions that I don't know what they are, but I do know that we're going to have to confront them.
Can I ask the chief a couple of questions? So over the last maybe year or 2 years, to Gil's point, we have sort of the, competition in Phoenix, and we have our local area, and I know, or I believe DPS is sort of separate from that. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at, kind of the pay ranges, but when I was looking at the officer, and I know that's probably where some of our angst is, and it was, I lost the chart. But there was the starting point, then there was the midpoint, and then there was the high end. Yeah, thank you. So it was, the new one would be 52.65, as the gentleman mentioned, and 76. When I work with other mayors, it's sort of always in like a per hour, a salary. You start at whatever, 25, and then you go up. How does that reflect what you're hearing from the ones that they compared them to from here? Is that enough of an adjustment to stay competitive?
Before you answer, Chief, can we just clarify that those numbers were based on our current salary without that bump, that initial bump, right? If we do an initial bump of 10%, would that adjust that, also that pay range?
Well, the numbers I just stated,
No.
that is the 10%.
That's a pay range.
That's with a 10%?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
No, 10% is for employees,
Right?
to move to that range.
Okay,
So if somebody is making $60,000, now they will be making 66, just an example. But the range is based on your comparator agencies.
Okay.
City of Tucson, City of Sierra Vista, DPS,
Gotcha.
and so on and so
Oh,
forth.
so I guess I'm confused. Thank you for clarifying.
yeah, sorry.
So the three that I mentioned for police officer, that is just the adjusted?
That is the base,
That's
the
a
range.
pay range for police officer job in the new pay structure.
So the 10% would be on top of that? No.
Only for current employees.
10% would be for employees, but that is the fixed pay structure, which we would recommend to move next year. Everything is moving,
Right.
but today, pay range for police officers is $52,000 to start and $65,000 midpoint.
Right.
So that's the range. That's and whatever, $80,000 maximum. That is the pay structure range. It's static. Now, people moving into pay structure, they receive increases, whether 10% or they receive different increases based on, the same wage penetration or whatever.
So I guess I'm still lost. I apologize. AC, can you, because we talked about it a little bit. Was there?
Sum it up for-
Yeah, for us here, me in particular. So the new pay range that I just quoted, that is not with the 10% increase?
It has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the pay range will essentially adjust by 10%.
Yeah, the
right?
pay range
But-
is 10% higher approximately than current pay range.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, but,
Yeah, the
Now-
pay range is higher, 10%. That's true.
and then on top of that, we're suggesting that the study would say for police officers, by way of example, those who are on staff currently may also get a 10% bump in pay. So bump in pay isn't necessarily just, they'll also fall within the new pay range. Yes, yes,
Right.
yes.
Right, okay.
So what does this do with the merit increases? Does that go away?
Mr. Mayor, members of
Yes.
the council, the merit program, this year we didn't offer merits. We did a 3% COLA that we front-loaded for the year on July 1. But we're in the budget process now, and I'm looking to reinstitute the merit-based program for next fiscal year. But there's some concepts that are being proposed here that may challenge that notion for certain groups. If we went with sort of the logarithmic
Right.
pay scale, then it would be just time and service, and it wouldn't be based off of performance.
If I may just clarify, that logarithmic scale is just to create a playing field, like level playing field. After that, you can implement any pay progression you want. I mean, you can create merit pay, you can create pay for performance, general increase, cost of living adjustments, whatever you decide. But initially, everybody will be placed in the right position based on that curve. And new people will come with the same principle. If you have 7 years of experience, you get to midpoint.
But
So-
then you could also have a merit system in place on
Yes.
top of that.
Yes.
That curve.
That just determines your position within the range.
Right.
But annual increases and the principle and the philosophy behind annual increases, that's something we can, you're flexible to do whatever you decide to do.
Right.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, what I don't want this turning into is a union pay scale, and everybody is the same thing, no matter how hard they work or how little they work.
Right, that was my point earlier, does it de-incentivize the reward system
Absolutely,
for
everybody
that?
comes down to the lowest possible level.
Right. So I gave you all kinds of extra time over there, Chief, since, yeah. So on that new starting mid for officers, starting mid and high point from a, per hour, do you think that helps us? Which I'm guessing it would help, but do you think that is enough in that particular area to kind of slow down or stop the hemorrhaging? Oh, yes, please come up to the microphone so we can be on the record.
Thank you.
And take that whole
Obviously-
Chiefs thing increase off the table. Just talk about yours.
I was busy going between my eyeglasses that I have to look over and looking over the shoulder over on the laptop. That was a little blurry for me over there. Obviously, any pay increase is an improvement. We are not competitive right now. Years ago, we used to have 1 or 2 openings, and after doing a filtering of applications, we'd have 60 to 80 people show up for our POPAT test. That's the physical agility test, or actually aptitude test, excuse me. We don't have 4 applications right now that we filter through to figure out if we have to put through anybody through a test right now. So this is true nationwide.
Right.
But I'm going to say the battle is on right now. I have multiple employees that are looking elsewhere, to include some of our competitors with Tucson, with the Department of Public Safety. While we may not be able to go toe-to-toe with them, similar to what Council said months back, we have to be able to compete with them, and it has to be a realistic competition. If the numbers I understand this evening, and I'm going to just round them off in thousands, 52,000, 65,000, 78,000.
Right.
That will not get us there, in my opinion. It won't get us where we need to go. Every agency battles with attrition, and then there's recruitment. I'm down 7 officers currently. I have 2 that are clearly in the mix right now for DPS that I would like to retain if it's possible.
Right.
We have spent tens, plural, of thousands of dollars training them. They're good employees, they're competent. That's why other agencies are looking at them. So we've spent a lot, meaning the town, and trained them well. They're good employees, they're not people I want to lose, not a single one of them. So that roughly 10% would top out an officer's pay at $37.52 an hour. And council members, that will not compete with what's going on right now. So while we can't compete with everybody, our Sierra Vista, Marana, Oro Valley, Tucson, Pima County, DPS, did I miss one? There's Marana, thank you, are doing this, and I know Marana and Oro Valley are waiting. I have counterparts that I talk to on a weekly basis. I do have a recommendation that I think would be competitive, and the minimum, and I'm just going to stick with top step, because the process we use through HR and Jessica does evaluate what skill sets they bring when we bring a lateral in, and where they should be in regards to a rookie coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So in my opinion, let's see, make sure I don't want to mess this up. Yeah, there it is. In my opinion, the minimum top step that would keep us slugging it out would be $40 an hour at top step police officer, separate from any incentives or specialty pay. And, well, I went over with staff again today, working on stuff. Realistically, the better one is $41 an hour. And that 40 an hour comes out to $83,200 a year. And the $41 an hour comes out to $85,280 a year annually. I think those are realistic for our area here with our comparative agencies. That right there will not put us at the top of that heap. There will be other agencies that exceed us, to include DPS at
Right.
$43.75 an hour. The governor's got money and he's going to spend it, and I think the state will recognize that if they back up from there, they run into the problem of having officers leave, troopers leave in mass, including their attrition rate, which they're battling with right now. They need to keep some of their senior people. I'm not sure if that answers.
No, it does.
The only concern that I would have is that the council consider that we're not going to solve this problem looking at the solutions of the past. We're not going to solve it with a merit pay. We're not going to solve it with other things, because at the national level, policing has become a different can of worms. And if we try and apply the solutions of the past, we're not going to make it. And what the chief is talking about is moving to solutions that are different and are not tied to the past necessarily, but we have to, I don't know, I mean, it's our job to figure this out. But I'm saying is, if we go to the past, we're not going to put our police in a competitive position. And once our police force loses its high standing, not that it would, but because we've got such turnover, we're going to even have more problem trying to recruit people in. And with that, I will shut up until the next topic.
You do not have to shut up. And I kind of related to a lot of the gentleman's comments because, when I was in the Air Force, we did measure it by, a really high re-enlistment rate because, you spend tens of thousands of dollars bringing these people on, and anything we can do to retain, and I know it's a dual-edged sword, we have to recruit, but we also, I think, almost more importantly, have to retain because, especially from the officer corps, but, all the way around, you want to keep the good people that are interacting, in some of the most hostile environments that anybody's ever seen to try to, retain that money, that expenditure that we've put out there on the street. And you can't go third party and just hire somebody, as an officer. It takes, I know, multiple conversations, 9 months to a year before you can release somebody, out there, especially in this, volatile environment. But I think we do have to do something.
And Mr. Mayor, that's the reason, we've got a staff, we value their opinion. We should be having them come back to us with what they recommend, rather than us trying to cherry pick and come up with a solution on a dais.
Right. Is that something, AC, that, especially, for the police in general, and I know you've been working with the FOP on other things too, back to Councilman Lusk's comments, that I think it is a multifaceted approach, but, money isn't everything, but it's something, and I think that has to sort of be the baseline. Do you have, first of all, I'm not saying the conversation needs to stop. Councilman Davis, did you have anything you want to
Yeah,
add?
no, the only thing I'd like to add, and I think the chief actually brought it up, is I think we also need to look at the hidden costs. We focused a lot on salary, but I think, like you said, the hiring, rehiring, equipping of police officers and, even staff in this building, we got to look at those hidden costs, because if we just keep this turnover going, that cost remains and continues to go up.
Right.
Could I just, I
you
lied.
promised me.
I
You promised
lied.
me.
I lied. Let me just say it this way. If I were making $35 an hour and somebody spit on me and I had to smile, I'd quit.
Right. Absolutely. Do you have enough so far to work with the chief and other department heads to, do you get kind of the sense from us, or do you disagree on the sense of us, or?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I think the challenge that we have here is, when we start talking about Phoenix or the rationale for the pay ranges that the chief has proposed, it sounds like we're challenging the notion of the comparator communities that have been selected. We didn't bring in the Phoenix municipalities. We selected the market that you see, which is, I believe, also coincides with what the FOP in our discussions has identified as the market. But if we want to start bringing in these other inputs or these other comparator communities.
No, I'm not suggesting that, but I know certainly, probably DPS is going to be one of our ongoing, and then kind of what I worry about is, as this process continues to roll out, I want to be at least a little proactive, because I know Marana and Oro Valley are going to probably somewhat use us as a baseline from that, and the pipeline is so thin, and I know you're working with other ideas, which I think are good, working with the FOP, but I think there's a baseline that you have to, be competitive for this dwindling, almost non-existent.
Mr. Mayor?
Well,
Yes.
And again, I think I understand where AC is coming from, especially from a financial side, but I think we're in unprecedented times, and unfortunately, that is specific to our police department, not to all of our employees. So to look at something a little bit different for our police force versus the rest of our employees, not that they're any more important than every other staff member that we have, I think that everybody can agree that it's just crazy time. So if we can at least think outside the box for that, and because of that, I think comparative communities are important, but unfortunately, this is a nationwide issue for police, not necessarily for the rest of our staff.
Yep.
So just to keep that in mind when you have your discussions with your staff and with your department heads.
Let's, Mr. Mayor, let's focus this. We've got a short-term crisis, and we've got a systemic problem with the comp system.
Right.
By Friday, if you guys come up and address our short-term crisis issue, and then going beyond looking at the systemic issue into the new budget cycle, I think we then can adjust everything, and we can attack everything, but we need to piecemeal it. Right now, we've got a crisis to deal with, and then we can fix the system that kind of got us into the crisis.
Mr. Mayor, can I add one comment?
Yes. Where was that voice coming from? I didn't recognize it.
I just wanted to comment, Chief of Police statement. What you're referring to is very easy to fix. We collect the data from comparable agencies, and we say, as of today, the average of those midpoints is $56,000, and the average of those maximums is $78,000. But the pay structure will allow you to move one grade higher, 2 grades higher, if you decide. And I just calculated just 1 grade higher would bring you to $26,25 or $55,000 minimum, and $60,000 midpoint, and so actually the midpoint is $65,000. So
right.
it would bring you to $70,000. 2 grades will bring you higher. So if you look in the future, because today they all implemented increases, but next year they will do it again. So if you want to fix it today, it's all in your hands. I mean, you can assign that job to higher pay grade. We just collected data and compared with today's relevant labor market.
I think I'm getting a little clearer, because we were using officer at a particular pay grade code structure, and just by the sake of moving that to another one,
yeah, you can just assign this job to higher pay grade. What we did was a model based on comparator agencies, like how they pay for the job. But if you decide that, well, with this job, I would like to get more aggressive and look more in the future, you just grade it 1 grade higher. And one grade will give 5% increase. Two grades will give 10% of the range. We're talking about the range.
Right.
Can we go back to slide where we have pay structure, please? Just back. More. Here.
There, yep.
So as of today, the police is assigned to, I believe, to grade. I actually don't see this here. Just
Yeah,
one
that's where I
second.
was lost, 'cause I didn't know.
To grade 116, with a minimum of $25, maximum $37, or $52,000 to $71,000. But the next pay grade will start at 54, midpoint 68, and the maximum is 75. The next pay grade starts at 57, 71, 78. So it's all in your hands. And many municipalities actually have separate pay structure just for police and fire. So you don't have to stick with these numbers. This is general pay structure that will apply, that will accommodate police, but you can create your own pay structure for police and fire. I mean, we don't have fire here.
Yeah,
Okay,
right. Well,
that's
thank you
just
for
a
that
comment. I wanted to
clarification.
clarify that we just collected data and compared, but it's all in your hands. You assign jobs wherever you want.
Okay. Do you think you have enough direction from us to come back with something on Friday?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I think I'll figure it out over the next couple days.
Okay.
So yes.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions on this one?
I just want to say thank you guys, all of you, especially the ones that have been here for more than 3 years. The ones that haven't been here for more than 3 years, I'll pray that you're going to stay.
And the peanut gallery out there, thank you.
We are the safest council chambers probably tonight, anywhere. Thank you, sir, for coming
Thank you.
down. I appreciate that. But we're not finished. Madam Clerk, item number 12.
Discussion and possible adoption of resolution number 2022-0693, changing the date of the special election regarding voter authorization for acquisition by purchase, condemnation, or otherwise of Farmers Water Company, including current and future water conveyance systems, and to operate a municipal water utility in the future from May 17th, 2022 to August 2nd, 2022, primary election date.
Thank you, Mr. Mariotti.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, at the December 13th council meeting, the council called for a special election to be held on May 17th, which was the soonest available election date, and that was to ask the voters and get authorization to acquire the Farmers Water Company. That action was critical at the time in order to meet certain election timeframes that are established by Pima County, and as we started analyzing things a little bit more, we determined that there really doesn't appear to be any significant advantages to holding an election in May versus the primary election on August 2nd. And changing the election date to the August primary election would obviously save us about $60,000, so that would be a good thing. And then it would also align that particular issue with the council member primaries, as this could obviously be something that the voters would be very interested in, not only as a separate thing to vote on, but also where the council candidates, their position on that. That would likely also increase voter turnout than just having a special election on that single matter. So staff does recommend approving the resolution to change the date.
Okay, thank you. I'll entertain or do you have any questions for AC?
Nope.
If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, move to adopt resolution 2022-0693.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, which brings us to item number 13. We're tabling that. And Madam Clerk, item number 14, please.
Public hearing, discussion, and possible adoption of ordinance number 2022-160 relating to Title 18 of the Sarita Town Code zoning, adopting a zoning code text amendment to Chapter 18.69.070 assurance requirements of the Sarita Town Code regarding process of assurances for completion of subdivision improvements, and repealing all resolutions, ordinances, and rules of the town of Sarita in conflict therewith.
Thank you. And Anna Cassidy, our Planning and Building Director, will present this item. Anna?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. It's a long agenda tonight, so I'm going to do my best to keep this as brief as possible. If you do have any questions, if you need more background information, please stop me and I will help you out with any questions that you have. So this is a zoning code text amendment. A zoning code text amendment requires one Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing, which we held on December 6th, and one Town Council public hearing, which we are doing tonight. Section 18.69.070 of the zoning code contains some requirements for subdivision assurances. Assurances guarantee installation of all subdivision improvements, and they can be released at different phases of development. We're proposing to amend the assurance release process for substitute assurances and time extensions, and also for the full release of assurances. What we would like to do is essentially take the town manager out of the equation for the full release of assurances and also the substitutes and the time extensions. These processes require inspection and signature from the town engineer and also from the planning and building director. The town manager does not go out and inspect subdivisions to ensure that improvements have been installed per plan. So it's really just an extra step in the process that doesn't necessarily need to be there. We're also requesting to remove the 10-day time frame for each department to provide the written comments to the town manager, because these will no longer go through the town manager. Staff recommends that the council adopt ordinance 2022-160 as presented by staff, because it streamlines the assurance processes, and it also gives staff the flexibility to implement efficiencies as we see ways to make our development processes go more smoothly.
So it's back to my regular conversations. It's faster and cheaper and smarter, and I think the three answers would be yes to that, correct?
Exactly,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor. It's really a win-win.
And I know we had Saba here for our town manager meet and greet, and I think they have submitted a letter of support for this, if I'm not mistaken.
They did. We provided notice to both SABA and MPA. SABA gave us a letter of support. We posted details of the amendment on our website, and we also provided public notice in the Green Valley News. I've presented this item to the SABA Technical Committee once or twice, and they were supportive of it as well. There's a suggested motion up on the screen. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Great. Well, this requires a public hearing, so at this time, I'll open the public hearing and see if there's any comments on this particular item. Any further questions for staff? I'll declare the public hearing closed and entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move to adopt ordinance 2022-160.
Second. Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Move to item number 15.
Public hearing, discussion, and possible adoption of resolution number 2022-0692, approving a minor general plan amendment of Spire 2035, Sarita's general plan, to change the criteria in determining a major general plan amendment versus a minor general plan amendment, and to update the zoning categories for land use designations to reflect currently adopted zoning district. Case number SA 721-0001.
Thank you. And Anna will be presenting this item again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Once again, I'm going to try and keep this concise, so please stop me if you have any questions or if I move too fast. So this is a minor general plan amendment about minor general plan amendments. A minor general plan amendment requires one public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission, which happened on December 6th, and one public hearing before the Town Council, which we are doing tonight. State law sets forth procedures for for general plan amendments, but it does allow the town to set its own criteria for major and minor plan amendments. It gives us the process for the major plan amendment, but it doesn't tell us what we have to count as a major plan amendment versus a minor plan amendment. A major general plan amendment is a substantial change to our land use mix. So that's something 40 acres or greater, a change between a residential and a non-residential designation, or residential changes that result in a 30% density increase or decrease. The process for a major general plan amendment is fairly intense. There's an application time frame between January and April, and that is because state law requires that all major GPAs must be heard together. So if we receive one in January and one in April, they all go to commission and council together. We don't take them one by one. They require 2 commission public hearings in 2 separate locations, followed by a town council public hearing, and then they require a supermajority council vote. In contrast, the minor general plan amendment does not have an application time frame. It requires 1 commission public hearing and a town council public hearing, and a simple majority council vote is required for approval. Currently, our list for what counts as a minor general plan amendment includes expansions of existing specific plan areas, establishing a new specific plan or special planning area, or any other change not meeting the criteria for a major GPA. This proposal is to basically add a new category of items that will count as a minor general plan amendment. Those would be changes going from commercial or high-density residential to mixed use for land areas of 40 acres or less. And we're also doing a little bit of cleanup. We have some zoning categories listed in the general plan that we no longer have in our zoning code. And we have some new zones in our zoning code that haven't been put into the general plan, so just a little cleanup item to go along with it. We provided public notice in the Green Valley News on January 9th. We posted on the town website. SABA and MPA have been notified, and we do have a letter from SABA in support of this minor general plan amendment. We held the Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing on December 6th. We had no public speakers, and the commission recommended approval in a 5-0 vote. Staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend that the town council approve the minor general plan amendment because it streamlines the process for certain general plan amendments. The streamlined process still offers staff and the public ample opportunity to comment on and review the proposals. And lastly, the cleanup and clarification of zones is just something that needs to happen. There's a suggested motion on the screen, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Do you have any questions before I open the public hearing? Seeing none, I will declare the public hearing open on this particular item. Would anybody like to address the council? Seeing no movement, I will declare the public hearing closed and entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Move to adopt resolution 2022-0692.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Tabling 16. And, oh, now we get to the sad one. Madam Clerk, I'd like to read item 17.
Recognition of departing elected official and discussion and possible action regarding the appointment process to fill the town council member vacancy.
Thanks, and I'll start with the appointment process first, and then we'll do the celebration second, so we can go taste some cupcakes after that. I asked Mr. Hockley to put together, because there's 2 ways we can do this, basically. We can wait, which is my druthers for us, all the amount of work on staff. We can wait to the next election cycle, because we're within a few months of that, as we did with Councilmember Morales, or we can go through an appointment process, and then they're still going to have to run in August. But I had Mr. Hockley put together a little breakdown of what we've done historically. If Dan, if you'd like to, or AC, did you want to go first, or just let Dan address it?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, is that on?
Yeah, you have to be close for some reason on that one.
And you have to be quick like Anna.
It reminds me of the days I was a DJ. I will be quick. Mr. Mayor, the exhibit that I provided to you all earlier today and is on the dais was actually prepared by Lisa, so I want credit where credit is due.
Okay.
I asked for 2 examples, and she gave me every example. Back to Vivian T. Back to Councilmember Stevens in 1995.
Never even heard of that person.
And it shows you the difference in the dates and whether we did it by an interview process or whether we did it by appointment. Interestingly, we have two council members sitting right here that went through those two different processes. Councilmember Davis was appointed after an interview process, and Councilmember Morales was elected at the primary and appointed. Oh, you were too, I forgot, that's right, Councilman Lusk, I apologize. We have 3 out of 6.
Some of us did it the old-fashioned way.
Right, we have a turnover issue here. Mr. Mayor, the one option is for you to go through the interview process. It would probably be, you would probably want to expedite that process, because that person, if they want to run for election, they have to pick up their candidate packet.
As of tonight, is make an appointment with the town clerk.
They have to turn it in by April 4th? April 4th, thank you. I was looking at your candidate packet together. So you could interview and appoint, or if you want to wait, you can wait until after the primary election and then appoint somebody from that election or somebody else. Keep in mind, the person elected in August does not take office until November.
Right, but if we appointed someone different than who got elected, that person would be out as of November.
Correct. That person would serve from August until November,
Right.
and then would be out.
And what if you happen to lose a second council member?
If the second, it depends on the timing.
Yeah.
But if we lose a second council member, I could look to Lisa, because she's better at this than I am, within 30 days of the petition deadline. Is that correct? Which is April 4th. So if we lose anybody after March 4th, then that person, the council appoints somebody to fill the vacancy until the next election, which would be 2 years away.
2 years out.
One more thing I had, I don't want to lose it, and I did.
You lost it. I saw it. It just-
Went right by me.
From there. So really, the question is, and part of my hesitation is, my opinion, it's going to be a lot of work to expedite it. Go ahead, it came back to you.
I did think of it. I want to tell you what this town code and the state law say about this. Both of those, and the town code references state law, say that the council shall appoint to fill a vacancy. It doesn't say you shall do it tonight or a month from now. And it doesn't say the process you'll follow. So it's my interpretation, I don't usually give legal advice in public, but it's my interpretation that you can do that at any, you need to do it, but you can do it anytime, and if you want to do it in either process, you're entitled to that, Mr.
Right.
Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I agree for Melissa, at least, there's 60-day window for them to get their paperwork in, get their signatures and all that, so they can get on the ballot, and I think we'll let that go. With another potential loss, I think we'll have to deal with that when it comes, and if that happens outside that window, we may need to.
Well, I think we would have to, because if we're outside that window.
Yeah, they couldn't.
We're not going to have a 2-year.
Exactly.
And we shall.
Right.
Right. Appoint that person.
So we deal with that one when it happens, and then we deal with this one, because it already happened.
Right, absolutely.
The only thing that I've always liked, I came in on the interview process. Well, it was a set deal. You don't know what that cost me, do you? But the thing is that the interview process allows the council to weigh how an individual might respond to the issues of the council and the community. An election process does not necessarily provide that. It provides for debates and other things, but generally a lot of people who apply to elections are carrying one issue with them, and that's the one they want to do something to. An interview allows to select someone with perhaps a broader view. Now, there's no guarantee of that, but that's the only reason that I prefer in positions like this to at least have an opportunity to interview, given practicality.
Right. But I guess my concern with that, with the time frame, because we could go through the application process, select somebody, they could run or not choose to run,
Right.
or could run and lose, and I'm back to staff time on putting all that together, because I was part of the last one, and it was pretty lengthy, and I think we're going to be bumping up against the election. And to me, it's like, let the residents decide, when possible, let the residents decide.
And you're bumping up against our summer,
Yeah.
downtime.
Right.
And we'll come right back in, and there's the election.
Right, and I think I'd be more concerned if we were, a split council and, one more vote would maybe matter one way or another, but fortunately.
My vote matters.
Yes, your vote matters. Not after Monday, next Monday. But I don't know, I guess I don't see the ROI sort of on there, but, I'm just one person. Debbie? No, I didn't know if I want to start here or there.
I would rather do it as an election.
Mr. Davis? Same. You don't get a vote on there. Okay, right. So I think that settles that from that perspective.
Do you need a motion?
I don't think so, Mr. Mayor. I think the direction staff has is to not begin the process of filling a vacancy, and you will get back to us later with the votes.
Right, and we will be appointing somebody, as we did with Councilmember Morales, as soon as the election's canvassed, which I thought worked really well for us.
Actually, not the canvass, because the canvass happens in November.
Oh, in November.
After the date of the primary.
Of the primary. Thank you for that clarification. And before we adjourn, well, before I cry, do you want to start?
I'm not very good at this. Yeah, I just want to say goodbye to a town, that I've worked in and lived in since, 1995, 1994. Yeah, I mean, I worked here before it was a town. I worked where this building, where was the trailer? Over by Fry's. We worked out of a trailer by Fry's when I was in the fire department. So I love this town. I love everything about it, but I love my children and my grandchildren more. So that is the only reason that I'm leaving the town, is to be closer in retirement to my children and my grandchildren. I don't even think I can put into words the amazing things that have been done in this town and for this town and with this town in the years that I've lived here, and then in the years that I've worked here on the council, and the amazing group of people that I've worked with, not just council members but staff. I mean, some great friends, in police. I mean, they're my friends. I first worked with them on the streets and then worked as an advocate, I hope, and supporting them here. My kids grew up in this town. My kids went through high school, all the way from grade school to high school in this town. But now that I'm older, they're all out of high school. All my kids are out of school, so, and moved. So, thank you. Thank you for the many wonderful years here, both working for you, and I guess most of it is working for you and with you and raising my children and being good to me and my family. And I wish you guys many more years. You guys are in good hands. My seat would be hard to fill, but you guys are in great hands. You guys have an amazing staff, and I think it's the respect that we have around the state is not by our mayor or by our council. It's just such a collaborative effort, between our staff and our council, and the ability to be able to work together. I don't think you find that anywhere else, or many other places, maybe. For a council and a staff to work so well together, and I don't know. So thank you, and I will miss everybody, and I'll miss the town, and I appreciate all the voters out there that voted for me every year or every election, and put their trust in me, and I hope whoever fills this seat is a great person that will stay here for many more years.
Well, it'll be a hard shoes to fill. I've always appreciated your collegiality, your smile, your optimistic, positive attitude, and always believed that at the foundation of all, you had a heart for the community and for Sarita, and that's not always easy to find. So it's been an amazing journey, with you, and I know you're not going to be too far away.
No.
And if I have problems up with another mayor, I know you can help me on that. on there, but thank you for everything that you've done for our town. Really
Melissa,
appreciate it.
let me just say, we love you too.
Yes.
And so, do you have a room for me?
Come visit on the north side.
I'll answer on behalf of her, no, just to be clear. But, no, it's been an honor and a pleasure, and having no more further business for the public, we're gonna go eat some cupcakes and fruit.
Juan, come eat.
Join.
You guys, we're sending all the rest of it back to.
Well, or what you don't wanna take home.